Neither the Scion FRS or Mazda MX-5 Miata are what you would call fast cars. Nor do they put down particularly good handling numbers. Instead, they excel at something else, something that's harder to quantify, but something that I believe is the most important part of a sports car: fun. The question is then, which of these two is more fun? This week on Head to Head, we have the oh-so-unfortunate task of finding out. Now's the part where we normally tell you the stats, but with these two, numbers don't really matter. They're all about fun. With the FRS, you get the sense that you're in a sports car modeled after the great classics. You have this great low seating position. In fact, the entire car feels low because that flap 4 sits so low in the engine bay. You don't have much hood to see. You just have the fenders that you can use to guide you from apex to apex. I gotta say, this flap 4 does not sound nearly as good as the Miata's inline 4. It just doesn't have that sweet induction note, doesn't have that intake honk that makes the Miata so rewarding to rev out. And they tried, they gave this car a sound tube which resonates some of the induction sounds into the cabin. The payoff, I don't know if it was worth it. But the rest of the car, this is a driver's car in the purest sense. Like the Miata, this is a back-to-basics car. There's not much complexity happening here. There's no electronic aids, not really much of anything except for a modestly powerful engine and 2 rear wheels to send you forward. That's great. I want more of that in cars. I want more naturally aspirated high-revving cars. And if the downside is the engine doesn't sound that great, I can live with it. This is a sharper handling car than the Miata. It has a more authoritative front end, and I feel like I have a lot more control mid-corner with this car too. The chassis seems a little bit more flexible, a little bit more willing to work with me, which is surprising because that's what we've always known the Miata is good at. This doesn't have the roll of the Miata, but it doesn't have the emotion of the Miata either because it doesn't have all that bounciness going on. This is the car I'd much rather take to a racetrack though because of the way it handles. But I might enjoy driving the Miata along this mountain road more. It's very fine difference between these two cars. They're just fun. Going from the FRS to the Miata, this car seems so disproportionately small. It is smaller than the FRS, of course, but you don't realize just how small it is until you hop in it and start throwing it around some corners. It feels tiny, but it also feels a little bit more intimate because of it. This car makes you feel like you're more conscious of the moment that you're in because this car is smaller, because you have good steering feel through the wheel, because you can smell the air, because you can look up and see sky. All that matters is the moment that you're in. All that matters is the road, the car, the sounds, lining this car up from apex to apex, pointing it around, your shifts. Super satisfying, this thing. I think the FRS is slightly sharper though. This has some clumsy elements to it. You have certainly more pronounced body movements, a little bit more roll. But there's something endearing about this car's character. It certainly sounds better. It sounds like a proper 4-cylinder sports car with a really nice induction note as you get into the power band. I also prefer this shifter to the FRS's. It's a touch more positive. Your shifts end with a satisfying thunk when you get in the next gear. You never have to think about it. I didn't want this to become a comparison of a sports coupe versus a roadster, but it's hard to ignore that aspect of it. Driving this car, you really appreciate what a roadster can do. In fact, I don't like to think of it as a car with a convertible top. I like to think of it as a car that just doesn't have a roof. Instead, it has this nice little shade that you can put over it when you park. You can also think of this car as not having doors either, just these things you have to step over in order to get in. And that's really the thing about this car, is it's not so much a car as it is a plaything, a buddy that just wants you to have a good time. It's not serious. You can't be serious driving this car. You can only enjoy it and smile. The crazy thing is, though, is as much as I love this car, I know as soon as I hop in the FRS, I'm gonna love that car more. And then I'm gonna jump in this car and then love this car more. And deciding between them is gonna be very difficult. So to help us decide a winner, we're gonna enlist the help of Motor Trend Testing Director, Kim Reynolds. Now, Kim, what are you doing?
Well, I'm looking through these reports, SAE papers that talk about the relationship between a car's performance and the stress on the human body. Here's one that's called the effects of vehicle response characteristics and driver's skill level on the task.
Are those heart rate monitors?
No, these are called electrodes, and these attach to your chest.
Why?
And well, they can pick up the minute voltages going through your heart, and that goes through these wires into this and then into that, which is a recorder, and we can correlate that with the GPS position of the car, so we can look on a screen later on and actually look at the heart rate.
Why?
Well, we can correlate the experience of driving a car to its effect on the human body. Some are very interesting. This one, for instance, effects of vehicle response characteristics.
Why don't you just go drive the cars and then tell us how fun they are?
Tell you.
Yeah.
How about these? I got 3.
No, just tell us.
2. All right.
He's got to be hating this right now, not having his test equipment.
Now, I'd love to have some instrumentation on this car, like that heart rate monitor, because my heart rate's a little bit faster right now, I'll tell you that. This car will drift its tail very nicely to a certain slip angle, but then it stops, and that's a good quality, because that can be entertaining without scary. If we were to associate cars with music, this one is not jazz. This is something else. There's a lot of improvisation. Now, there's an important quality.
He's probably talking about jazz or something right now.
There was a study done recently about jazz musicians, of their brains, and actually
Some nonsense.
subconscious just comes to the surface, and that's where jazz improvisation occurs. You can be improvisation. Look, I'm going to understeer, that's understeer. I can oversteer, that's oversteer.
Let me tell you something about Kim Reynolds. When I first proposed to him this idea of driving these 2 fun cars and seeing which one was more fun, what he wanted to do, and he really wanted to do this, was attach a potentiometer to his face so he could measure his smile. He could attach a numerical value to that. And if you average all the numerical values that you get from smiling from a lap around or figure 8 course, you'd have a result. And if you did that with another car, you could compare the results and see which average smile index was greater than the other, and that way you could numerically guarantee which car was more fun. Kim has to hate fun to come up with an idea like that.
How do I put this politely? This is for a generation who spends so much on their haircut that they would not want it messed up by the wind. They have to be in here and look a bit mysterious. The Miata's a different deal. You're exposed to the world. Everyone can look at you. They can see your hair's messed up. They can see you've been in the sun too long. All that kind of stuff. Not too mysterious, is it? Yeah, so here in the Miata, my first impression is that it's a little bit softer car. So again, if I had some instrumentation, I could tell the difference, but I don't have any instrumentation in the car. I just have to use my hands and feet and stuff like that. So here I'm going closer to the limit in the Miata, right there, on and off the throttle, able to slide the tail around a little bit. That's nice. Come down here, and guess what I'm going to do next? I'm going to slow right down. This is not the limit. This is not what we normally do on the figure 8 course. In reality, a car like this, I would drive just about like this in the real world. This is not about limits, this car. It can do them, and it can be danced around and moved wonderfully if you want to do that. But driven at this speed, 40 miles an hour right now, in the FRS, this would be kind of boring. I had driven the very original Miata way back when, And what's kind of interesting here is that even though it's grown and changed over the years and in small ways, this is really the same car. That's a really good thing because they had it right in the first place and it did not need to be changed much. Maybe a little bit bigger inside as Americans have gotten wider. The classic sports cars of the 50s and 60s didn't need reinventing, they needed reliability. I've owned 3 different sports cars in my life. I had a 1959 Austin Healey Bug-Eye Sprite, a 64 MGB, and a 1966 Jaguar E-Type, XKE they call them. And this car really does carry many of the same experiences and qualities that those cars had, but it's a dead reliable automobile. No, it's not as good looking as the Jaguar. I understand that.
So Kim, you've just driven the MX-5 and the FRS without test equipment. I know we're in a brave new world, but what do you think?
Yeah, that was difficult. That Scion is I would say two-dimensional. It's the violin with one string, and it's a nice sound. Boom, yeah. Nice sound. This has all kinds of strings on it. That might be maybe a better tone on that one string than this car has, but you know, this can play Vivaldi, and that can't.
Gesundheit.
Thank you.
Both of these cars will quickly put a smile on your face, and between them, there is no wrong choice. But that's not a satisfying end to a comparison, is it? So let's look a little bit closer. The FRS offers fabulous control to its driver. It's the solution you should choose if you want to do autocrosses or track days. It also has a bigger trunk, 4 seats, better fuel economy, and a roof. It has practicality. The Miata doesn't, but it makes up for that with the overall experience that it delivers to its driver. It makes driving fun regardless of the speed. It's more expressive, more emotional. Not that the FRS lacks emotion, but the Miata gives you joy. The FRS is a driver's tool. The Miata is a driver's toy. It wants you just to have fun. And so by a very thin margin, it wins this week's head-to-head. What I hope Toyota and Subaru don't do is make a convertible version of this car. Invariably, when you make a convertible out of a car that was never intended to be a convertible, you add weight, you lose chassis rigidity, you lose things that make the car good. And making this car convertible isn't going to make this car an equal to the Miata. The strength of this car is that it's a very good driving sports coupe, and that's what it needs to be. It doesn't need to be anything beyond that.